Have you ever seen something happening and thought to yourself, should I do something? And then just didn't? Well, you're not alone, and it probably doesn't make you a bad person. Today, we're going to dive into the powerful, often totally invisible psychological forces that stop us from taking action, and more importantly, how we can start to overcome them.
You know, we all have this gut feeling, don't we, that there's safety in numbers. I mean, if something bad happens in a big crowd, of course, someone is going to step up and help. It just makes sense. But what if that common sense idea, that whole safety in numbers thing, is just completely and maybe even dangerously wrong? So this comfortable belief, it was just shattered back in 1964 by the story of Kitty Genovese. The initial reports were shocking. 38 different witnesses apparently saw or heard her being attacked over a half-hour period, and yet not one single person called the police. This absolutely horrific event forced psychologists to ask a really, really unsettling question. Why? Why didn't anyone help? And here's the really wild part. The research that came out of this didn't find that these 38 people were, monsters or just uniquely bad people. Instead, it revealed something way more universal, that certain situations can be so incredibly powerful that they literally override our individual personalities, making good, well-meaning people just hesitate or freeze completely. So, okay, what are these powerful forces? Well, psychologists basically boiled it down to 3 core mechanisms that all work together to create this kind of paralysis. You can think of them like the 3 pillars that hold up this big, invisible roof of inaction. Let's break them down. First up, and this one is the big one, diffusion of responsibility. It's actually pretty simple, but it's so profound. If you're the only person there, 100% of the responsibility to act is on you. But in a group of 10 people, well, you might feel only about 10% responsible. And in a group of 100, your personal share feels tiny, almost like nothing. And this is the thought that runs through all our heads. Our brain isn't saying, I don't care. No, it's saying, someone else will surely handle this. We just assume that another person is closer, or maybe more qualified, or that they've probably already acted. The responsibility just diffuses away from us. The second pillar kind of builds on this first one. It's called pluralistic ignorance. Now, that's a fancy term for what's basically a state of collective confusion. It happens all the time in ambiguous situations. Is that person sleeping on the bench, or are they unconscious? Are those 2 people just having a loud argument, or is it something more serious? We look to other people for clues. But here's the trap, right? Everyone else is doing the exact same thing. They're looking at your calm, passive exterior for their cues. So you end up with this bizarre situation where you have a whole group of people who are all privately worried, but each one is looking at everyone else's inaction and wrongly concluding, oh, I guess it's not a real emergency after all. And the final pillar is a really powerful social fear that I think we can all relate to, evaluation apprehension. This is just that simple, gut-wrenching fear of looking stupid. Even if you know it's an emergency and you feel responsible, you might still freeze up. The little voice in your head isn't even about the victim anymore. It's all about us. What if I intervene and I'm totally wrong? What if I make things worse? Everyone is going to think I'm an idiot. This fear of social judgment can be absolutely paralyzing. So you see how it works? You put them all together and you get this perfect storm for inaction. The responsibility gets divided up, the situation gets misinterpreted as not a big deal, and the fear of looking silly just paralyzes us. It's a seriously powerful combination. Now, here's another thing. Deciding to help isn't a single yes or no choice. Psychologists actually frame it as a 5-step cognitive gauntlet. And to actually intervene, a person has to successfully clear every single one of these hurdles. A failure at any one stage means no help is given. It just stops. So first, you have to actually notice the event. Then you have to interpret it as an emergency. And that's where pluralistic ignorance can trip you up. Next, you have to assume responsibility, which means you have to beat that diffusion of responsibility. After that, you have to feel like you know how to help. And finally, you have to decide to implement that help, overcoming that fear of being judged. Okay, so this all makes a ton of sense for those kinds of street corner emergencies. But what's really fascinating is how these exact same psychological forces are shaping a much, much more common problem. Why so many of us don't volunteer for causes we genuinely care about. Think about it like this. There are 2 kinds of helping.
You've got your spontaneous helping, that immediate reflexive reaction, and then there's planned volunteering. That's a deliberate, long-term decision. They seem like complete opposites, don't they? But the psychological forces that prevent them are shockingly similar.
So remember the bystander's thought process, right? It's driven by that diffusion of responsibility. It's that core belief that someone else will surely step up and do something. Okay, now listen to the potential volunteer. Someone else will sign up. It's the exact same psychological logic. We just assume that out of the entire community, surely someone else will bear the cost of volunteering their time.
So if we're all sort of wired to hesitate, how do we break the spell? Well, the fantastic news is that just by understanding these forces, we can learn to counteract them, both as individuals in a moment of crisis and as organizations that are looking for help.
For us as individuals, there is a practical toolkit, the 5 Ds. You can be direct if it feels safe to do so. You can distract to de-escalate a situation. You can delegate by pointing to someone and giving them a specific job, like you in the red shirt, call 911. You can delay and check in after the fact, or you can document what's happening. You don't have to be a hero. You just have to choose one simple action. And what about for organizations? What's the biggest barrier they face? It's not a lack of time, it's not a lack of interest. Research consistently shows the #1 reason is this simple, powerful phrase: no one asked me. This is the volunteer's dilemma. It is diffusion of responsibility on a massive scale. This means organizations can systematically dismantle these barriers. To fight diffusion of responsibility, that no one asked me problem, they have to make a direct personal ask. To fight pluralistic ignorance, they need to make volunteering visible and show that it's normal. And to fight evaluation apprehension, they have to provide excellent training to build confidence and skills. And all this brings us to a really powerful shift in perspective. It's about consciously moving from being a passive bystander, someone who just watches things happen, to being an active upstander, someone who recognizes a need and decides to take a stand. And this really is the ultimate takeaway. Inaction isn't usually a personal moral failing. It's often the predictable default outcome of a system that just isn't designed to encourage action. It's a design problem, not a character problem. So the next time you see a chance to help, whether it's a small crisis on the street or a big opportunity to volunteer for a cause you believe in, the question isn't just, will someone else do it? The real question is, will you wait to be asked?